Here we go. Good morning, everyone, and happy Social Work Month. My name is Annette Johns, and I'm the Associate Director of Policy and Practice with the Newfoundland and Labrador College of Social Workers. I will be your moderator for today's education event, The Practice of Gratitude. The webinar presentation will be approximately 35 to 40 minutes, followed by a question and answer and group engagement period that I will moderate. So throughout the presentation, I encourage you to type your questions using the question mark widget to the left of your screen at any time, and I'll begin asking the questions during the Q&A period. The recording of the presentation will be available on demand and in the coming days on the college's website under the Continuing Education tab. So now I want to introduce our speaker for this morning, Tina Simpson. Tina has been a practicing social worker in various roles for 29 years. Some of those roles have been with Child Protection, the Opioid Treatment Center, and Doorways Walk-In Counseling. She's also had the exciting opportunity to hold a social work license in Texas and Maryland and worked in the area of adult daycare. Currently, Tina is enjoying work as an EFAP regional coordinator with Eastern Health. Tina, I'm really looking forward to your presentation this morning, and I'm now going to pass the virtual podium over to you.
Thank you very much, Annette. Happy Social Work Month to everyone who's joined us this morning. I hope you've had an opportunity to celebrate yourselves this month. I happen to think that some of our social workers in the province are some of the best. So I'm happy to be with you this morning. I'm excited for the opportunity. I'm going to acknowledge right up front that I'm a little nervous to be presenting to my peers. What is up with that, right? I've done this presentation several times to staff or with staff at Eastern Health, and I can do it in my sleep with them. But I'm keenly aware, I think, that the persons in the room today may be quite familiar already with gratitude. But I am also reminded that the purpose of a presentation is not always to present something new, but to share experiences. And so that is what I hope to do with all of you today. So thank you for joining me. So we're going to start with some introductions. Typically, I've done this presentation in person. There are some benefits to doing it by webinar, but we're going to do some introductions in a little bit of a different way. I always like to know who's in the room with me when I'm presenting. So I hope that all of you have your coffee or your tea or water, and that this webinar this morning, I have mine, by the way, in my favorite pottery mug. I hope this webinar is an opportunity for you to sit back and relax a little bit. Our work days can be stressful and a lot. So give yourself the gift of focusing on just one thing for the next hour. Let's not multitask. I've been guilty of doing that, I admit. But let's focus on gratitude this morning. Since we're not in the same room, let's be creative with some polls so we can learn who is in the virtual room. So let's go to our first poll. I'm wondering this morning, what part of the province are you tuning in from? I'll give you folks a moment to answer that poll. Excellent. So we have almost 40% from the Avalon. We have folks from Eastern, Central, Western, and Labrador Grenville. That's really exciting. I'm glad that you've all joined us from different parts of the province. And so our next question is a little bit of a fun one. Tell me the truth. Who is wearing pajama bottoms right now? It's been a really interesting time over the last few years for social workers. The opportunity to work from home, I was just chatting with Annette, and we were talking about how back in the 90s, when I finished my first social work degree, I never thought I'd have the opportunity to work from home. So it's been a real thing that I've been grateful for. I'm also grateful for those of you who have continued to work in the workplace and play an important role there. So let's see who's wearing pajama bottoms. Most of you are not. There is a small percentage of you who are. So thank you for that. And then the next one. How many years have you practiced social work? I'm sure there is lots of experience in the room this morning. Give you a second to complete that poll. So most of us in the room have practiced for most of us are 20 plus years in the room. And then there's 11 to 15 and some 0 to 2. So all kinds of experience, as I suspected, in the room. And then one more poll before we get into the presentation. Have you ever experienced compassion fatigue or burnout? Give you a second there. A large percentage have said that yes, they have experienced compassion fatigue or burnout. Some have not, and some are not sure. Thank you for your answers there as well. So lovely to know who's in the room this morning. Thank you for that. So why gratitude? So I'm going to be vulnerable and authentic this morning in my presentation. I happen to believe that's when we experience growth in our lives. So I've been practicing social work for 29 years. Most of that's been in mental health. And a few years ago, I thought I was okay. But I've since learned, after doing some reading around trauma, that sometimes we can absorb some of that. So a few years ago, I began to wonder if I was depressed. I wasn't happy about going to work. I would take sick leave more frequently than I had typically done. I couldn't even talk to my clinical lead at the time without crying. And so I wondered, is this depression? But after giving it some thought, what I discovered is that I was experiencing burnout. So I saw my doctor. We talked about taking some time off. I said to her, I think I'll take a couple of weeks. I was fortunate that she said to me, 2 weeks is probably not enough, Tina. Why not try a month? So I took a month off of work. And so this was time for me to really focus on me. We're really good as social workers about, talking with others about caring for themselves. I was not always so good at taking my own medicine. Literally, I am what they call medication non-compliant. So gratitude was one of the things I landed on when I did some research. I always go to the research and the reading the articles, and I found gratitude as one thing that we can do to take care of ourselves when we're experiencing something like burnout. I discovered a video, a TED Talk actually, about it. Now, there are a lot of TED Talks about gratitude if you do a search, but I wanted to share the specific one that I found that started me down this pathway. So I'm going to share that video. It is a TED Talk by Haley Bartholomew, and she talks about how she was experiencing some emotions that she was starting to wonder about, and she discovered gratitude. So this video is about, I believe, 10 or 12 minutes long. We'll watch the video and then continue with the presentation.
and in 2008, I discovered the secret to happiness, and that's why I'm here. But before I discovered it, I was actually depressed. I felt incredibly like life was a treadmill, blah about life. Like there was no point that we were going to get married, have a couple of kids, buy a house, and, you know, grow old and then die. And sounds a bit dramatic because I am, but that is how I felt. And I was struggling to enjoy my life in any way. And I had 2 healthy kids, a lovely partner, but it just did not feel anything for my life. And so it was concerning me because I wasn't being a great mom or a great partner, and I wanted to be those things. So I went and I found a nun. I'd heard about this lady who was helping people with some counseling and kind of spiritual direction sort of stuff. And I'm not Catholic, but I wanted a whole new perspective. And she certainly gave me that. And I sat down with her and I was kind of suggesting why I might be so unhappy. And she listened patiently, and then she said to me, "No, I think the secret to happiness is reflection and gratitude." And at that time, I was like, that's a bit underwhelming. What does that mean in my life? And yes, I'm very grateful for my healthy kids. I know in my head that these are all good things that I have, and I should be grateful. But what about this feeling? I don't feel anything for it. And so she helped me, and she said, "Hayley, I want you to do a 10-day project and just take 10 minutes every day, reflect through the day, really think through your conversations, you had breakfast, what did you do after that, and then see if there's anything there that pops out to you that you're grateful for. Not what you should, but what you feel." And so I took her advice and I did it, and it sparked something amazing within me because I started to see things I wouldn't otherwise have seen. And they weren't the things you'd think. And that 10-day project was amazing, but I knew I needed more of that. I needed a lot more of that. And so, being a photographer, I decided I was going to do a photo a day for a whole year of something I was grateful for every single day. And I bought enough Polaroid film to do a year-long project. And this is kind of what it started to look like. No, not that. Let's go back one. Yeah. It was things like the color green, the billion different shades of green there are. I was suddenly one day just struck by it. It was my youngest daughter helping me down a step. She's like 3, and she was like, "I'll help you down." And it was just adorable. And things like money on the meter when you have no money in your wallet. That is amazing. It is such a gift. And I started to see things like rainy days meant that I got to use my favorite umbrellas. And pancakes on a Sunday morning. They're so good I didn't get to photograph them, sorry. But they're there. And beautiful friends getting married. Little and beautiful, special little moments throughout every single day that made me delight in my day. Actually, through the project, I learnt quite a lot of things. And sorry, I keep doing it twice. And probably the biggest thing I learnt was how my expectations on other people prevented me from really appreciating who they were. Namely, my husband, who is here, and I'm going to say it, he's not very romantic. And this is what I thought anyway. I just didn't think he was very, didn't take me on dates and didn't buy lots of flowers and do all the things that in my head a husband should do. And this one day, I hadn't taken my grateful photo for the day, and I was scanning my life, basically, for what was I grateful for today. And I was looking around the room, and then I saw my husband serving dinner. And in the corner of my eye, I watched as he put the biggest piece of pie on my plate. The best piece of pie on my plate. And I was like, whoa, I wouldn't have seen it if I hadn't been looking. And he was doing that every day, actually. He was putting me forward first. But I wasn't seeing it because I wasn't looking. And it completely changed my view of how I see people, particularly him. And through the project, he just continued to do beautiful things, not even thinking about it. Every day we would drive somewhere, he would always hold my hand as we drove. He would sing our daughters to sleep with a ukulele. And if I rang complaining one day at work while he was at work, "Our house is too hot, we have no air conditioning," he would arrive with ice cream. And it really made me reevaluate our relationship and what my expectations were, and opened my eyes to who he was. And actually, at the end of the project, someone interviewed us and they asked Andrew, what did you notice that was different within your relationship or with Hayley? And he said, "I feel like I am enough for her now." And that hit me hard. I'd been married to him for 8 years at that point, and I was sad that it had taken me 8 years to see him, to see all the beautiful things he was doing for me every single day. But I'm glad that I got there in the end, and I'm grateful for this project. The other thing I noticed was nature, and it was so unexpected, but nature just spoke to me so much. The color red that would shine just so differently if the sun was on it. The way my daughter would put beautiful little flowers in my handbag. Or mint. The smell of mint is amazing. It's beautiful. Or the way weeds would dance when you drove past your car. The wind would blow them. Or dandelions, which I like dandelions all over my backyard. I think they're beautiful. And all these little things started to make me feel so like I was blessed. I am so lucky to be here to see these little gifts. A beetle flew onto my daughter's shirt one day in a car park. You can see she's absolutely thrilled about that. But I was amazed. She had this beetle, and it was like a piece of jewelry. It was amazing. And it stayed there long enough for me to take a photo, and she's like, get it up. And I'm like, stay still. Anyway. Another thing I learned was about parenting. I had really felt like this was the boringest job I'd ever had. And it was long, and there were lots of food and lots of nappies and things that were boring, like dishes. And people would always say, "What have you been up to today?" And I was like, "Don't ask me." But this project showed me what a delight and an honor it was to be in their company, to be with them as they, offered to take my hand, or were singing so loudly in the car as we drove, or pretending to be candy canes, losing their 2 front teeth. It is my privilege that I got that time with them, and I started to see that right when I was with them. And I'm so grateful that while they were still little, that I saw what a gift it was. One of the amazing things about this project is that it kind of spread like wildfire. And I had a magazine article, and it was online, and a few people started to write and tell me their own stories with their grateful projects. And it's been a complete honor to have that. And this particular person is Amy Gill, and she and I have become good friends. But she wrote to me an email one day, not long after she had given birth to twin daughters, and one of them, 24 days later, died of a heart complication. And I would like to read you a piece of her letter to me. And Amy knows that I'm reading this. "The next few days were hard. I had to pick myself up and keep going, as I had Annabelle, a 3-year-old, and Penny, who needed me, and I was so lost. It was funny, though, because for some reason your article kept coming back to me. I dug out the magazine and I looked at it again, and I checked out your website. I decided that this was how I was going to cope. Instead of looking at what I had lost, I was going to focus on what I gained and be truly grateful for having Rosie in our lives, even for such a short time. In her 24 days, she had taught me more than I'd learned in a lifetime. I was grateful for the chance to hold her, to feed her, to bath her, and tell her that I loved her. No longer would I take the small things for granted in my life. Life is too short, and I decided that each day I would count my blessings, and so my grateful project, Count Your Blessings, began. And now I've taken 73 blessing photos, and I'm truly grateful for them. The project has gotten me through such a hard time. Yes, I still have my moments of sadness, but I have so many more moments of joy. I've chosen to be happy, and this week I've been looking back at my album and reflecting on where I've come from. And I want to thank you, Hayley, for being an inspiration. For you, I am truly grateful. Amy. And I cannot tell you what an honor it is to be part of someone's story in that way. And Amy really reminded me that even in the hard things in life, that we can choose to be grateful, that we can find the most amazing treasure in the most awful things. And you really do find what you are looking for. And in my life, when I have had hard times and things go wrong, I've really found that gratefulness has helped me learn the most I can possibly learn, and appreciate everything that's happening, and to find the gold in the mud. And now I really, when I look back on my project and actually my life, I see delight, I see beauty, I see a life I'm incredibly rich and grateful for. And it isn't that I own a house, and it isn't happiness outside of me, it is within me. And I've learned that that is where my happiness is, it's in here. And through this project, I've surprisingly been able to help other people find that too. And that's been an absolute honor. Thank you very much for having me.
So after watching that video a few years ago, I decided that I would take my own journey of gratitude. And I also decided that I would do it for a year. So every day for one full year, I would find one thing. I chose one thing because I wasn't sure if I could find more than one thing in my day. I would find one thing every day. And I also happen to be a bit of a photographer. Been taking pictures since I was a teenager, so this connected with me as well. So I would take a picture, and I decided I would share it on social media. So there are a lot of definitions of gratitude if you do a search, but this is my favorite, and it comes from Harvard Medical School. It's a thankful appreciation for what an individual receives, whether that's tangible or intangible. With gratitude, people acknowledge the goodness in their lives. And as a result, gratitude also helps people connect to something larger than themselves as individuals, whether to people, nature, or a higher power. Please don't tell anyone, but I have been known to get emotional at the Santa Claus parade and at the Telly 10. Remember, don't tell anyone that. So I'm going to share some of my gratitude journey for that year. And what I'm hoping is that at the end of the presentation, that you too will share one thing with us that you are grateful for. So this photo was my very first gratitude post. Someone delivered a bouquet of flowers to me that day. I don't remember why or what that was about, but I did appreciate it. I've loved flowers since I was a little girl. I have a memory, or maybe it's not a memory, maybe it's a photo that reminds me of traveling with my family, being on the border between two provinces, and there was some beautiful flowers. And there was also a sign that said, "Don't touch the flowers." But my mother sat me right down in the middle of those flowers and took my picture. So this had to be my first grateful post. This photo has several things in it that I was grateful for this particular day. So some days I could identify one thing. Other days there was more than one thing. This is a picture of my late grandfather's root cellar. out in central Newfoundland. Every time I go home, I have to take a picture of it, and I have a picture of it from every season. I think it reminds me of him now that he's not around any longer. There are some other things in this picture, though, that I was grateful for. It was taken during sunset. I happen to love a good sunrise or sunset. We can always count on a sunrise or a sunset, and they look different every single day. There's also some birch in this picture. I love birch. I don't know what it is about it. We don't have a lot of it on the Avalon Peninsula, but when I see it in other parts of the province, I will often say to my husband, can you pull over so we can cut some birch? We don't always do that, but true story, he did bring some birch home for me from Nova Scotia one time. It was extra large luggage on an Air Canada flight. There's also, if you look closely, you can see some leaves on the ground in this picture. I do love fall, and I love when the leaves fall to the ground. Come on, do I really need to say anything about this little guy? I don't need to, but I will. This is Rascal, and he has been a part of our family for a few years now. My boys had been bugging me to get a family pet, to get a dog. One of my reasons that I would say to them as a no was, but if we get a dog, there is going to be fur everywhere in my house. And one of the boys said to me, but Mom, your hair is already all over the house. That got me, and we decided to go out and get a dog. Well, the joy that this guy has brought to our family and our lives is really immeasurable. He is loyal, and he's loving, and he's cuddly. He's great company when I'm home alone. He makes me smile or laugh every single day. So I'm very happy that I said yes to a family pet. When I do this presentation in person and I say to people, do you know what this is? Everyone knows that this is a pot of turkey soup. This day I was grateful for turkey soup. I love it, and I could eat it every day. I make a great big pot, and every day for lunch I can have a bowl of turkey soup. But I was also grateful for turkey. Turkey is the gift that keeps on giving. The next day you can have leftovers. The day after that, hot turkey sandwiches, and then a bowl of, or a pot of turkey soup. So grateful for turkey this day. Some days my gratitude came very early in the day, like when you wake up to a pretty fresh snowfall. I always say that it looks like someone has taken a sifter and sifted some icing sugar onto the trees. This is a picture of my dad. He'll be 78 years old this summer. I can hardly believe it. So some days it was really easy to figure out what I was most grateful for that day, especially if I felt a wave of emotion. That was a sign to me that this was my grateful post for today. A couple of years ago, my dad had open heart surgery, and the day that he came out of surgery successfully was absolutely my grateful post for that day. I was also grateful for our medical staff, the nurses who took such good care of him. He still remembers to this day and wants to come back and say thank you to them. And the doctor who performed the surgery. What a talent and a skill to do that. Some days it was a very tiny thing that I was grateful for, or in size, I guess, tiny in size. Most people don't know what this picture is because it's an exaggerated photo, but it is an asterisk. So that little symbol that is above the number 8 key on your keyboard. This is what I was grateful for this day. My husband showed me the value of an asterisk in an Excel document, and that made my job so much easier from that day forward. So that day I was grateful for the lowly asterisk. Also for my husband, but mostly for the asterisk. Sometimes it was the bigger things that I was grateful for. This is Kalen. He is my youngest boy, and he is 16 years old. Not a boy anymore, a young man now. But a few years ago, Kalen was diagnosed with ADHD, and along with that came some symptoms of anxiety and depression. He's also, unfortunately, experienced bullying in the school system. And so most days when Kalen came home from school, he wasn't a happy-looking child. But this particular day, he came through the door with the biggest smile I'd ever seen on his face. He's holding in his hands a gift that he received from a friend. This was the first time that he had ever received a gift from a friend at school during the holiday season. So that, of course, was my post for that day. And this is a collage of all of the pictures or posts during the 360 days of my gratitude journey. So you'll notice from some of my examples of gratitude that this didn't mean that I had a perfect, stress-free life. Gratitude isn't about being unrealistic or what we might call toxic positivity. My dad had heart surgery. There are challenges to parenting and to parenting a child with ADHD. It's not about pretending that hard things are not happening in our lives. It's the notion that it's okay to experience all of the emotions. Difficulties don't mean, though, that we can't also have gratitude. And it's also that at the same time as these hard things and difficult emotions are happening, that there is usually something to be grateful for, as small as it might be. But it also might mean that there are some days where you can't find something to be grateful for, and that's okay too. A gratitude practice is about rewiring our brain to reap the benefits of a gratitude practice. But I did begin to notice during my practice that what you focus on grows. The more I focused on gratitude, the more things I saw to be grateful for. This is a picture that I took while we were at a friend's house one evening, standing around in her kitchen. And when I looked to the floor, there was a mat that said, "Always be grateful." So we're going to go back and we're going to look at the pictures that I shared, but we're going to look at them a little differently. And you'll see right away what is happening. So the bouquet of flowers. I would really prefer that you didn't buy me a bouquet of flowers, please. They're a waste of money. They don't last very long, and it's just going to be a few days, and I'm going to have to throw them in the garbage. A different perspective, right? But it's okay. It's okay if you believe that about a bouquet of flowers. Your gratitude may not be my gratitude. For anyone who has great big trees on their property and they have to rake up all of these leaves every year, it can be a big job. So maybe you don't appreciate the leaves during that time. There really is fur all over my house from this dog. Why did I think that a beagle, because they're short-haired, wouldn't shed? I was so wrong about that. So there is fur added to mom's hair around the house that it's hard to keep on top of some days. So let's talk about anxiety for a minute. I'm not one that typically experiences a lot of anxiety. I do sometimes, of course, because it's a normal emotion. But having this dog is probably the most anxious time sometimes that I am, because he's an escape artist. A beagle follows their nose. He has dug out underneath the fence in my backyard. I am probably almost a little bit obsessive about making sure that the inside door is closed so that he can't get out. There was one day that he was gone for 8 hours before we got him back. So this dog has caused me some anxiety. Personally, I don't think there's another perspective to a pot of turkey soup, but my husband would beg to differ. He's okay with one bowl, but any more than that, I don't need to be eating turkey soup all week long. Snow. Not always something to be grateful for. It can be difficult to clear a driveway or clean it up around your house, especially if you struggle with some physical health issues. And there definitely isn't another perspective on this photo, but you see what I mean. It's okay if you don't feel the same way about my grateful posts as I did. We're all unique individuals. So it may seem kind of simplistic. It can't possibly improve my life, right? But note that the presentation is called The Practice of Gratitude. And that means it's an act of rehearsing a behavior over and over, or engaging in an activity again and again for the purpose of improving or mastering it. And the key word is practice. This doesn't mean that every now and then you notice something that you're grateful for. It means making an effort on a daily basis to look for something that you are grateful for. And there are lots of benefits in the research. There's quite an impressive list of benefits around gratitude and how it can be beneficial to you in many ways, physically, mentally, socially. So I've just provided a short list of some of those benefits here, and they're an improved health outcome, enhancing your dopamine and serotonin. I mentioned the rewiring of your brain, and it can actually create brand new neural pathways in your brain. It reduces fear and anxiety by regulating the stress hormones, an increased resilience to trauma, improved social relationships, increased well-being. And this last one is one of my favorites in that it is contagious. So over the year of practicing gratitude and posting about it on social media, many people reached out to me and said, "Thank you for reminding me to be grateful today," or "I'm going to start my own gratitude practice." That's one of my favorite benefits. So how do you get started with a gratitude practice? The classic is to look for 3 things a day. So take some time in your day that's most convenient for you, whether morning or evening, and spend some time looking for 3 things in your day that you're grateful for. There are apps around gratitude. Yes, there is an app for that. You can be old school, like I am sometimes, and look for a journal, an actual physical journal that you can write about gratitude in. You could go for a grateful walk. So this can also be called a mindful walk. So it would mean taking out those earphones when you listen to music or a podcast while you're walking, and instead noticing around you while you're walking what you're grateful for. And this can also be a grounding practice if we're experiencing anxiety. Or you could have a grateful conversation. So is there someone in your life who you could chat with every day and have a conversation with each other about what you were grateful for in your day? You can listen to a podcast. There are lots of podcasts about gratitude, or even go for a grateful drive. So similar to a grateful walk, turn off the radio, notice what's around you as you're driving. And that's also about being mindful. Sometimes we do things on autopilot and don't take a moment to focus on what's happening in our present moment. I am going to mention this book called The Gratitude Diaries, just because I'm in the middle of reading it right now. A family member recommended it to me. It is a good informal, kind of casual book if you're interested in reading a little bit more about gratitude. Of course, there are others out there, but this just happens to be one that I'm in the middle of right now. So I happen to love quotes, and I'm going to clue up with a quote from one of my favorite people and authors, Brené Brown. So in 12 years of research, I have never interviewed a single person with the capacity to really experience joy who does not also actively practice gratitude. And the next couple of slides, I've included some research for you to take a look at if you would like. And I believe the presentation will be available by PDF as well if you would like to take a look at these research articles. And then my last slide, I mentioned earlier, I'm interested in hearing from all of you one thing that you are grateful for today. And to do that, we're going to use the group chat. It looks like two thought bubbles, I guess you would call them, just above the Q&A widget. So if you'd like to share with us one thing that you are grateful for today, I would love to hear about some of those. And of course, if there are any questions, we'll talk about those too. So thank you for listening to my experience about a gratitude practice and how it was helpful to me and my experience of burnout in my work as a social worker. Thank you.
Hi, thank you, everyone. So we've got the group chat open there so people can continue to share. But I just want to take this moment, and Tina, you can go through those and maybe highlight some of them as well that you're seeing coming in. But just to thank Tina for this very insightful and informative presentation. We did have a couple questions that's come in. And I believe one of the questions was already answered, but someone was wondering about the name of the person who was in that TED Talk. The full name again, Tina?
Yeah, so the name was Haley Bartholomew.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I guess just to hear a little bit more from you, Tina, in terms of what was the number one benefit for you in practicing gratitude?
Good question. There were lots of benefits, but I would say that I really believe that consciously practicing gratitude every day for a year really did rewire my brain. So I was a grateful person before, absolutely, but not in a way where I consistently every day for a whole year focused on gratitude. And so it kind of ended up being my default, and it's still my default today. So every day I'm noticing or looking for something that I'm grateful for.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful, thank you. Someone else is asking about, a concept around toxic positivity. Would you mind explaining that a little bit and how it, relates to our discussion here this morning?
Yeah, so toxic positivity can be the belief that despite any difficulties that we're going through, that people should have an optimistic viewpoint. It can sometimes look like, good vibes only, or always look on the bright side of life. And that can sometimes be dismissive, because the reality is that there are other emotions, and that the emotions are okay for us to experience, and we need to experience them.
Well, thank you. We had another question come in around what do you feel or perceive as the relationship between mindfulness and gratitude?
I think they're very closely connected. I think I mentioned it briefly when we were talking about how to get started on a gratitude practice. So when you're practicing gratitude, it is sometimes an opportunity for you to pause and take a moment and be in the present moment and really experience what you're grateful for, and sit with that emotion. That's when our brain really gets the opportunity to rewire itself. So mindfulness is very similar. It's about being in the present moment and creating awareness of our thoughts and our emotions and what's happening in our body. So I think they're very closely connected.
Mhm. Okay, wonderful. Thank you. So that's all the questions that's come in so far. So Tina, I'm sure you've been monitoring the group chat there. Is there anything from there that you wanted to highlight or speak to?
Oh, a lot of wonderful, wonderful comments. I haven't had the time to read all of them. I'm hoping that they're still available. Are they, Annette, after the presentation?
Yeah.
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 Well, lots of good ones. Grateful to share an office with you. My 5-year-old daughter, her beautiful, funny personality, a quiet morning coffee. Yes, that's one of my favorites. I have a practice every Saturday morning to sit down and enjoy my coffee before I do anything else. Grateful for the presentation. Thank you. There's so many wonderful comments there. I couldn't possibly read them all in the presentation, but I will take a moment to do that after. Can't wait to look at them.
And everyone who's joining today are seeing those comments too. So there's a good group sharing, that's happening. So that's fabulous. Someone did make the comment that they are so happy you took the time not to multitask and to pay full attention to the presentation. So that was really great. Yeah,
Excellent.
excellent.
I'm glad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm just scanning through the questions there. Again, there's no other questions, but certainly some great comments, and people were able to identify things that they're grateful for, and I think certainly resonated with me throughout the presentation. So I'm going to try that as well. Tina, you inspired me to look at that from my own vantage point as well. And like you, I like taking pictures, and I can see a project for me in that. So thank you.
Absolutely. I'm emotional reading these comments. Thank you so much for sharing, everyone. I'm glad to have had the opportunity.
Yes, thank you. And I want to say officially, say thank you to Tina for facilitating this excellent webinar for us today. And for sharing, your knowledge, your experience and perspective on the practice of gratitude. And I said this to you, Tina, offline, that this is a great session to end Social Work Month on, with that positivity and things that we can take away and reflect on in our own personal and professional lives is certainly a great way to end off, the month as we celebrate our profession. And we hope that those discussions and reflections will continue beyond today. So I know how busy you are, so I want to thank you for taking the time to facilitate this session for us today. It is truly appreciated, so thank you. And we're grateful that you were able to do that for us today. And for everyone attending, you may claim one required CPE credit for attending the webinar as per the NLCSW CPE policy. As noted by Tina earlier, the PDF of the webinar with all those great resources and research articles are available in the resource section on the webinar platform. So you can go in there and print those off. And as we begin to sign off, we also ask that you complete the evaluation form. Feedback is always important and used in our future CPE planning. So we do ask for topic suggestions that you might be interested in having a webinar on. So on that note, thanks again, everyone, for joining. Enjoy the rest of your day, and particularly as you continue to reflect on what you're most grateful for. And certainly something I'll be doing, Tina. So thank you again.
Have a grateful day, everyone.